Part 1. My name is Mabel Hart. Most folks who know me call me Miss Mabel. I'm 73, inmate A42197 at the Franklin Women's Correctional outside Columbus. I iron uniforms in the laundry, read paperbacks with torn covers, and keep a record of everything that ever mattered. This is the straight account of how a basement door turned me from the family problem into the only person in our house willing to stop the people who raised me. I was born in 1951 in Chillicothe, Ohio. Dad, Roy, ran parts at the rail yard and ran his temper at home. Mom, Nadine, sewed for neighbors, stitched her name into aprons, and stitched silence into me. My little sister June came in 58 with a heart that clicked like a metronome. The doctor called it a murmur. Dad called it defective. Mom called it manageable, which in our kitchen meant hush and obey. We lived in a one-story on Locust Street with a cellar door that stayed locked year-round. Dad said tools were down there. Not for girls. Nights had a ritual. June coughed. Mom warmed milk. Dad checked the bolt on the basement like it was a safe. Some evenings, a sedan we didn't know idled at the curb, and a neat man with a leather case came to our back steps. He wore bright clean gloves, spoke thin as fishing line, and left after midnight. Our curtain stayed shut. At school, I recited state capitals and kept my sleeves long. Teacher Mrs. Ellenberg sent home a note about concerns. I folded it to a square and slid it under the linoleum behind the stove. In a town like ours, people wave from porches and don't ask what they don't want to hear. June faded slow. Her cheeks went paper white. Her appetite broke into crumbs. Dad kept a ledger on the kitchen table, columns for dosage, response, notes. Mom brewed teas, lined bottles by height, said we were participating in a study to help children like June. The man with the case started bringing reels in round tins and a gray machine wrapped in a towel. He began using the side door. I was 12 the afternoon the basement key slipped. Roy had left it dangling in the lock when the phone rang. He shouted for Mom. She shouted back about broth. The pot boiled. I was clearing plates when I saw the brass wink in the jam. I palmed it, finished stacking, and said I needed air. Out back, I counted to 50, came around the front, and slid inside through the hall like a shadow. The house hummed. Radio on low, kettle up, June asleep. I turned the key and eased the door. The first smell was chemicals, sharp and sweet. A single bulb hung by cord. The cellar wasn't tools. It was a setup. A narrow cot with straps, a metal tray with syringes, jars with handwritten labels, a projector on a crate, a clipboard with dates. In a milk crate, film cans marked with our last name and numbers. Heart 12, Heart 13, Heart 14. I threaded the projector like Mr. Novak showed us in science. The wall bloomed gray. There was June on the cot, tied at the wrists, eyes wide and confused. My father stepped into frame and pushed a plunger. My mother held June's head and smoothed her hair like she was brushing a doll. No sound, just their hands working neat as they canned peaches. Another reel, June thinner. Another, a strip of tape across her tiny arm where a vein had blown. In the margin of the clipboard, someone had written, tolerated, agitated, adjusted. Under adjusted, a check mark. I killed the bulb and sat on the steps with my hands around my own throat to keep from making noise. A car door thumped above. The neat man's voice washed through the floorboards. Increment tomorrow, he said. Dad agreed. Mom fussed about a rash. He said it was expected. He used June's name like a case file. Subject JH. After midnight, they left the kitchen light on like always. I pretended to sleep. The next morning, Dad told me to go straight home from school because a delivery was coming. He handed me $2 for bread, a gesture he used when he wanted me where he could see me later. I nodded and tucked both bills in my shoe. At dismissal, I didn't go home. I went 3 blocks past the bakery to the city library and asked the desk lady how to copy a paper without taking it. She pointed me to the coin machine. I fed dimes like a gambler and copied the top sheet from Dad's ledger and the label from one of the jars I'd tucked under my coat. Ket 50, veterinary, dilute. I put the jar back where it had sat, cap turned to the same scratch mark on the glass. Then I walked to St. Bridget's and asked Father Mullins how to ask for the sheriff without making Roy mad at me. He told me to breathe, then said, "Bring something that doesn't talk back. Paper, a name, a number." I brought all 3 that evening. When the neat man drove away, I waited for the radio to rise and the sink to run, and my parents to start arguing about the heat bill. I went down, took the latest can, the newest page from the clipboard, and the leftover envelope from the specialist. Return address in Dayton, typed name, Dr. Leon Pruitt. In the bathroom, I slid the paper into a plastic bread bag, pulled my coat on, and stepped into cold. I didn't make it to the rectory. Roy was on the porch in his shirt sleeves, coat in hand, like he'd been waiting for a rabbit to bolt. He didn't shout. He put his palm on my back and steered me inside as if we were waltzing. Mom locked the door. The ledger sat open. The man's card lay beside it. Clean font, no office listed, just a number. Roy said, "Calm as weather. You put your nose where it doesn't belong. Now we'll decide where it belongs." He marched me down and tied my wrists to the cot like it was nothing. Mom turned up the bulb. I could see the tremor in her mouth and the steadiness in her hands. The syringe on the tray had a yellow tint. "Only to relax you," she said, even and quiet. "You'll feel floaty." "You won't fight." I said one sentence. "Where is June's grave?" Mom's eyes flicked to Roy, then to the far corner where a new cardboard box sat taped shut. She swallowed. Roy followed my gaze, understood the risk, and reached for the syringe. I moved before he did. I twisted my wrists against leather until the top strap split. It wasn't clever. It was fear with fingernails. The loosened buckle clanged. Roy slipped and cursed. I kicked the tray up. Metal bounced. The needle skittered. Mom lunged. I grabbed the projector, heavy, square, and swung. It connected with a thud I still hear in the laundry on quiet mornings. Glass burst. The bulb went out. We crashed into dark, air thick with chemical and dust. I didn't run. I felt along the floor for the syringe and the envelope and a film can, grabbed all 3, and scrambled up the steps. The lock fought my shaking hands. The key bit. The door gave. I bolted for the front yard, cut across mulch to the maple, and kept going until Locust bent toward the railroad. I didn't make the sheriff that night either. I made the depot. Mr. Parrish at the ticket window saw my face and didn't ask questions. He pointed to the baggage lockers and said, "Dime a door, keep the key." I loaded a reel and the envelope inside Summer 14, turned the brass, and put the key on a string around my neck. Then I walked to St. Bridget's with the copy of the ledger page tucked under my shirt and rang until Father Mullins opened in his robe and shoes. "Names," I said. "Dates, a doctor in Dayton, and a basement that doesn't hold tools. He looked at the paper, at my scraped wrists, and at the way I kept one hand over the locker key like a relic. He said, "We'll call the county first thing. You go nowhere alone." I went somewhere alone anyway. Back home, before dawn, to the apple tree June had loved. I carried a garden spade and the kind of anger that doesn't make speeches. If my sister was in the ground, I would find her. If she wasn't, I would find where they had sent her. Either way, the house on Locust Street had run out of secrets. That's the beginning. No sobbing, no sermons, just a locked door, a key, a projector, and a girl who stopped being quiet. Part 2. Dawn cracked cold over Locust. I sank the spade by the apple's roots until blisters opened. No bones, no cloth, only a small tin wrapped in wax paper. Inside, June's hair ribbon and a tag torn from a hospital bracelet. June Hart, DABA 110358. Research. My stomach went to ice. They hadn't buried her here. By 7, Father Mullins had me on a church bench with tea I didn't drink, and a notepad I did. He dialed county. Deputy Alma Ricks arrived before the parish bell finished chiming 8. She was tall, freckled, and all business. I laid out dates, times, names. She asked for something that traveled. I slid the ledger copy and Dr. Leon Pruitt's return envelope. "Any originals?" she said. "Locked," I answered, and tapped the key string on my neck. Ricks parked by our curb with her lights off and knocked calm as a meter reader. Roy opened in his work shirt, grease on the cuffs, and Sunday face on. Nadine hovered, a dish towel strangled in both hands. Ricks asked to see the basement. Roy laughed like she'd told a joke and stepped aside. The cellar, under morning light, looked like any storeroom. Tool chest, canning jars, sawhorses. The cot was gone. The tray was gone. A patch of damp on the concrete had been scrubbed raw. "Just cleaning," Roy said. "We're tidy." Ricks's eyes found the fresh drag marks on the stairs and the broken bulb filament glittering where a broom missed. She didn't smile. "Where's June?" Ricks asked. Nadine lifted her chin. "Resting with my sister and Marion till she's stronger." "Address?" Ricks said. Nadine rattled one. Ricks wrote it down. I shook my head once. "Aunt Shelley lived in Dayton, not Marion." Ricks didn't blink. Back at St. Bridget's, she called in the address. Nothing. She called the school to confirm June's absence notes. Falsified. She called the rail yard. Roy had left mid-shift last night. With that, she phoned the county attorney. "I need a preservation order on the Hart residence and any vehicles," she said, voice flat. "And I want eyes on the depot." "Give me the locker key," she told me. "You'll get a receipt." We went to the station. Mr. Parrish set his jaw like a man who hated seeing kids at his window in trouble. Alma signed the log, opened Thatcher 14, and lifted out the can and envelope without flinching at the labels. She snapped photos, slid each item into paper bags, sealed, dated, and made me sign across the tape too. "Chain's clean," she said. "Let's keep it that way." The county lab was a cinder block building behind the courthouse with a humming fridge and a tired chemist named Belson stitched into his coat. "No speeches," Alma told him. "Run the obvious." He drew up a little and went to work. 30 minutes later, he said one word. "Ketamine." He pointed at a line on the spec. "Veterinary concentration, cut with sugar water, and God knows, illegal as Sunday drinking." "Print me that," Alma said. She handed me the copy and tucked her own into a folder with my ledger page. "We're moving," she added. "Slow, but we'll move." Roy didn't take slow well. By afternoon, he was in the rectory foyer, demanding his disobedient girl and asking who had stolen private medical materials. Father Mullins stepped between us, collar bright as chalk. "She's under my roof," he said. Roy hissed something about churchmen meddling in family business. Alma strode up behind him. "Step outside, Mr. Hart," she said. "We're done with private." The county attorney, Ralph Denton, mustache like a broom, met us at the curb. He read Belson's printout, side-eyed the priest, then me, then Alma. "I can get a temporary protective order and a hold on that house," he said. "But a warrant for records needs more." "Do we have more?" "Try the vet angle," Alma said. "Pruitt's mailing from Dayton. Somebody supplies him." Which is how we ended up in a strip mall vet clinic a county over, staring at a receipt book with Roy's name in block letters and a signature that looked like his when he was sober. The vet, Dr. Leip, swore he thought Roy kept calves. Alma swore he was about to lose his license if he didn't tell us where Pruitt picked up packages. Leipy blanched and gave an address. Warehouse by the river, Unit C12. "Stay in the car," Alma told me when we rolled up. She and another deputy, Parker, went inside. I watched a gull peck at a bread bag and repeated a prayer I only half believed. 5 minutes. 10. The door of C12 slammed. A man in a khaki coat with sharp hair and horn rims, Pruitt, stepped out carrying a steel case. He saw me through the windshield and stopped. Our eyes hung there a heartbeat too long. Then he ran. Alma's shout bounced off concrete. Pruitt bolted between storage rows. Parker chased. I did the thing I wasn't supposed to and cut him off near the service road. He feinted left and threw the case. It hit my shoulder, burst the latch, and scattered vials into gravel. I didn't think. I scooped two and jammed them into my coat pocket while Alma tackled him from behind. "Hands where I can see 'em," she barked. Pruitt went still, mouth set thin. The badge on his wallet said nothing. No agency, just a name. The case tray had stickers, dosage logs, patient codes. JH was there. So were others. At the station, Pruitt asked for a lawyer in silence. Denton came down, looked at the tray, and swore softly. "This buys us the warrant," he said. Judge Nick signed it on his back porch with lawn clippings on his shoes. Alma drove straight to Locust. Roy tried charm first. When that flopped, he tried rage. It didn't matter. Deputies spread through every room with paper bags and pens. In the hall closet, Parker found the projector wrapped in a blanket and 2 reels labeled with dates I recognized. In the crawl space, Alma pulled a canvas duffel with syringes, tape, leather straps, and a notebook in Nadine's tidy hand. Weights, times, reactions. Under the laundry sink, they fished out a burned bundle of letters still legible at the edges. "Dear Mr. Hart, ongoing study, honorarium." "Where is she?" I asked Nadine, last time polite. Her mouth trembled, then hardened. "You think you're saving anyone?" she said. "You're killing our chance to start over." "Where is June?" Alma repeated. Nadine stared at the pantry door. Alma opened it. On the top shelf sat June's shoe, small and scuffed, like it had been set there to remember a foot. I reached up, brought it down, and felt a slip of paper inside. It was a bus claim tag from the Greyhound Depot with a number and a date, 2 nights earlier. We were moving again. The depot clerk checked the tag and returned with a brown parcel far too light to be a child's clothing. Inside were papers, discharge summaries stamped with an Ohio Research Hospital seal, consent forms forged with Nadine's swirl, an invoice paid in cash, disposition, transfer to partner facility, No name, no address. A note paper-clipped on top in Pruitt's angled print. Specimen JH non-viable. Archive materials retained. Archive, I said, the word sour. Keep it together, Alma said evenly. We're in it now. Denton took the stack and phoned the hospital. Stonewall. He phoned the state board. A secretary promised a call back. He phoned a reporter he owed a favor. Don't print a name, he said, but make calls. Night fell like a curtain. The jail held Roy and Nadine for the night on obstruction and controlled substance charges, while Denton drafted more papers with coffee breath. Alma drove me to St. Bridget's and insisted I sleep on the rectory couch. I stared at the ceiling fan until the blades blurred. At 2 a.m., the phone in the hallway rang. Father Mullins answered, listened, and called Alma back from her car nap. County Dispatch, he said. Break in at the lab. We were out the door in 60 seconds. The lab's back window lay in diamonds on the ground. Inside, the cooler stood open. Belson had his head in his hands. They only took 2 things, he stammered when he saw Alma. The vial from the locker and the tray from the warehouse. I put my hand into my coat pocket. The 2 vials I'd grabbed in the gravel pressed glass cold against my palm. Not everything, I said. Alma exhaled like she'd been holding the air for hours. Then we still have teeth. Behind us, sirens pulled closer, thin in the dark. I watched their light sketch the trees and thought of June under some other ceiling, the word archive stamped on whatever passed for a file. We had pieces now. Names, logs, signatures, a man in cuffs, vials in a pocket, a town finally awake. Not enough to pull her from wherever they'd moved her. Not yet. But enough to wreck the cover that let them shop in our county. Enough to start a fire on paper that wouldn't blow out. Morning would bring news crews, lawyers, maybe statemen with soft shoes. I wasn't interested in speeches. I wanted rooms, addresses, doors. Tomorrow, Alma said, reading my face. We drive to Dayton and start knocking. Not tomorrow, I said. Now. Part 3. We didn't wait for sunrise. Alma signed the scene log at the lab, pocketed the incident number, and tossed me the spare windbreaker from her trunk. No heroics, she said, starting the cruiser. I kept the 2 unlogged vials zipped inside my sleeve like coins I couldn't afford to drop. US 35 ran black and emptied toward Dayton. At a truck stop, Alma used the payphone, not the radio. She rang Denton, the state board, and a reporter named Corliss, who never slept. Keep your car pointed at the hospital and the river warehouses, she told him. If anyone moves a cooler, I want the plate. We hit Dayton at 3:11 a.m. The address on Leip's ledger, Riverside Storage, sat behind a chain gate. Alma killed the lights, hopped the fence, and had me follow footprints already pressed in dew. Unit C12's hasp was relatched with a fresh zip tie. She cut it, slid the door, and breathed through her teeth. Empty. New smell of bleach. But the back wall studs showed clean rectangles where shelves had been yanked. She rolled her mag light under the lip and fished out what the mop missed. A corner torn from a manifest and a plastic wrist tag like June's, only this one read, MK Transfer 0237. Minutes ago, Alma said. She handed me the torn manifest. Rook Research, 4th and Hawthorne, Doc B. You up for B? I was already moving. Rook's campus looked like every mid-century nonprofit. Glass, flagstone, a bronze donor plaque. At Dock B, a cube truck idled while 2 men in scrubs smoked and watched the bay door. Alma parked around the corner and pulled on a janitor's coat from the lost and found in her trunk. Carry the clipboard, she said. People salute paper. We went in on their smoke break and walked like we belonged. The freight elevator chimed to a basement that smelled like antiseptic and onions. Signs pointed to archives, cold. A badge reader guarded the door. Alma rapped once on the adjacent service closet. A woman in gray coveralls opened a crack. Her name patch read, Calhoun. We're with County, Alma said low. We need 5 minutes in archives. We can make your life worse if we do it loud, or better if we do it quiet. Calhoun measured us, my church dress under a borrowed coat, Alma's steady eyes, and decided. She dug a badge from her pocket. My boy's upstate, she whispered. I don't like men who think kids are paperwork. The reader blinked green. Inside, my breath smoked. Steel shelves ran like library stacks. Boxes, codes, dates, anonymized initials. JH appeared on 4. 2 film reels, a folder, a sealed pouch. Alma handed me her Polaroid. Shoot labels. Don't open, she said. I took photos, slid the boxes onto a cart, and tucked the sealed pouch into my coat with the vials. The pouch label said, Residuals, retain. I didn't need translation. Door thump, footsteps. Calhoun hissed, Security round. She shoved a mop bucket at me and pointed us through the laundry chute room. We pushed the cart into a linen tunnel that smelled like hot cotton and slid along wall pipes until it split near an exhaust fan. Voices boomed past in the hall we'd just left. Alma thumbed her radio. Not transmitting, just checking time. 3 minutes, she mouthed. We popped out near a loading cage. The cube truck was still idling. The driver leaned on his horn like a man whose clock was king. Calhoun rolled a clean hamper in front of our cart, stepped out first, and snapped at the driver. If you honk again, I'll tell Hunt you jammed my schedule. The man wilted. We slid the cart past his blind fender and went into the stairwell. At the top, a guard stood by the badge reader. Alma didn't break stride. County subpoena, she said, waving her clipboard like a warrant. The guard glanced at the bold letters. Rook internal. Sanitation. He squinted. Then the phone behind him rang. He turned to answer. Calhoun had timed it. We moved. We made the car. Alma didn't exhale until we hit the second light. Then the street behind us lit with blue. Not police. Private security beacons. White SUVs. They're counting boxes, she said. Hold on. She didn't outrun them. She outpapered them. At the first open diner, she pulled into a slot marked Delivery Only, flipped her badge, and marched inside. The security man followed, agitated, hand at his belt. Alma lifted both palms. Officer, she said loudly enough for the short order cook and the tow truckers to hear. You are interfering with a county evidence transfer. You want to talk? We do it at the courthouse in front of a judge. She dropped Denton's card on the counter like a chip. The cook set his spatula down and rested his fist on the bell. The security man thought twice and backed out, cheeks hot. We ate eggs fast, because it looks normal, then drove back to the county line with the heater full blast on the film cans. At the courthouse, Denton was waiting with Nix and 2 sheriffs. We signed chain forms until my hand cramped. Each can got a sticker, each photo a number. Calhoun's borrowed badge, a property bag, and a note that read, Return to sea. What's in the sealed pouch? Denton asked. Don't open it here, Alma said. Bench warrant only. And gloves. Nick swore under his breath at the labels. This will not be a quiet week, he said, initialing a stack of orders. He added one more. immediate injunction on destruction of materials at Rook, and a freeze on Pruitt's accounts. Denton called the AG. Corliss called every station between here and Cincinnati. By noon, vans sprouted on our square like mushrooms after rain, but no June. We screened one reel in a locked evidence room with Belson running the projector like it might bite. Grainy. No sound. A girl on a cot I knew by her wrists. Nadine's handwriting ticks on a clipboard just in frame. A man's hand. Pruitt's ring. Adjusting a drip. Timestamp. Date. Dosage. Reaction. Then a cut to labels being sealed. Archive. Again. Belson stopped the reel when my knuckles went white. Enough for probable on a dozen counts, Denton said, voice tight. Not enough to put a body in a place. We don't need a body, Alma answered. We need a door. She pointed to a wall clock in the frame, half visible. Hospital clocks carry codes. Belson, blow that up. He did, slow and careful. Haw B02, Hawthorne, basement, room 2. We were back on US 35 before the projector cooled. This time we didn't sneak. Nix's order gave us a patrol escort and a state investigator who smelled like aftershave and policy. Rook's lawyer met us with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Alma handed him the injunction. He handed her a speech. She walked past both. Down in Hawthorne's basement, room 2 waited behind 2 badge doors and a sign that said, mechanical. The air on the other side was cold and still. One wall held freezers with paddle locks and clipboards. Another held metal cabinets marked Archive, Bio. The last held a locked interior door with a glass porthole. Alma looked through, then stepped aside so I could see. A chair, a table, a folded blanket. No child. On the table, a cardboard box with transfer paperwork and a small cotton dress the color of milk. June's. The hem had a mended snag I'd stitched myself. I don't remember crossing the room. I remember the feel of the cotton against my cheek and the burn behind my eyes. I refused to let fall. Alma read the transfer sheet aloud. Specimen JH. Status. Transport to Columbus Hub. 0510. We were 4 hours late. Hub, I said. There's a route. Routes have manifests, Alma said. She turned to the freezers, flipped clipboards, and found what we needed. A routing sheet with 3 lines of cities and times, and at the bottom, an address that read, Columbus, Saddleworth Logistics, Dock 7. You coming? She asked. I slid June's dress into an evidence bag and signed my name. You know I am? Part 4. Saddleworth sat in a square mile of concrete and wind east of Columbus. Rows of semis, forklifts weaving, sodium lights washing everything the color of old bones. Dock 7 ran a line of blue crates marked with biohazard pedals and perishable 72-hour chain. Alma parked the county sedan between 2 reefers and peeled the magnet off her door so it wouldn't scream, Sheriff. Time is the only game, she said. We get a manifest, or we get a driver. I walked the perimeter like a woman looking for the bathroom. Men in neon vests swore at pallets. A woman with a clipboard ran the floor like a drill sergeant. Her badge read, I, Clark, shift lead. I said her name, handed the most official piece of paper we had, Nix's injunction, and kept my voice flat. Miss Clark, we're tracing a misrouted pediatric medical unit. We need the hub and spoke list. Dock 7, last 6 hours. She didn't blink. We don't hand over proprietary schedules because someone says please. Alma was at her shoulder before I finished. Judge's order. You refuse. I close this dock for the day and bring the news vans to film every thawing box. Clark's jaw worked. She waved us to a steel desk, jammed a key in a locker, and pulled a file too fat for the binder rings. "Everything in ink is a truck on my concrete," she said. "You got 15 minutes." The log was a spider web. Carrier codes, timestamps, condensation notes. 3 entries carried Rook's vendor number. One line had the cargo code that matched June's pouch. JH72, destination blank. The driver signed M. Castor. Route, I-70 to Indianapolis Hub, handoff to private courier. "Castor?" Alma asked. Clark pointed to a man arguing with the coffee machine. Thick wrists, camels in his sleeve, eyes that had seen enough. "Out 2 minutes ago," she said. "Reefer 642, Bay 11. We didn't run. We walked like women late for a train. Castor's reefer was already off the dock, hazard lights chewing the dark. Alma banged on his door. He rolled the window and sized us up. My church dress, her windbreaker, the paper in her hand. "No paper I sign says I stop," he said. "True," Alma replied. "But if one of your boxes is tagged in an injunction, you stop or you keep driving into a felony." He stared at the paper. The coffee steamed over his dash. Something in his face changed from no to maybe. "I haul what they strap," he said. "I don't read Latin." "Then let's read English," I said. "We open only what the order names. We seal it again." 5 minutes. He looked past us at Clark, who gave him the do-what-you-can shrug of a woman who wanted her board to roll. He killed the engine, dropped from the cab, and swung the doors. Cold climbed my arms. Pallets in blue shells, each with a sleeve of forms. Alma read labels. I hunted codes. Third stack, bottom row, JH72. Lowercase initials scribbled beside it, MK. The signature was Pruitt's tidy half name. "Seal's intact," Castor said, pointing. "So is the judge's," Alma answered. She cut the strap, eased the lid, and cracked the inner foam. Inside, 2 silver cryotubes and a zippered pouch the size of a lunchbox. The tag matched the one from Rook's basement. Specimen JH, archive. Not a child, but a trail. "Where's the courier handoff?" Alma asked. Castor tapped his route sheet. "Indy South Lot, Bay S3, 1020. Private van, no logo, man with a ball cap. We don't ask names." Clark studied my face, then turned to a forklift driver. "Mo, route check. If we break chain on a medical, we record it." She pulled a Polaroid from the desk, shot the open crate, shot Alma's order, shot my hand on the tag, then nodded to Castor. "Seal it." We restrapped the box. Castor closed up, climbed in, and looked at Alma. "You riding or tailing?" "Tailing," she said. "Then keep up," he muttered, gears clacking. I called Denton from the passenger seat of our sedan to keep the line hot. He had DAIs now, the kind that measure juries in their sleep. "You get the Indy plate," he said. "We'll get the warrant for the van and the warehouse. And Alma, don't spook the target early." We tucked behind Castor's reefer on I-70, exhaust haze in our teeth. The highway ran straight as a plumb line. Alma kept 2 car lengths and her lights off. At a way station, Castor rolled through slow. Alma waved at the trooper playing solitaire in his booth. Sunset pushed a red bar under the clouds. We hit the Indy Beltway at 10:12, right on schedule. The south lot was a corrugated desert with 3 live bays and a shack the size of a closet. A white van idled at S3, driver cap down, phone glow on his chin. Castor backed into the slot. A dockhand dropped the plate. We stayed 2 aisles over behind a stack of pallets. Alma handed me binoculars and a breath mint. Dry mouth makes you miss. The dockhand broke Castor's strap, rolled the JH72 crate onto a pallet jack, and pushed toward the van. The driver stepped out, signed the transfer without looking, and popped his door. Alma lifted her camera, fired 3 frames, face, plate, clipboard, then put it down and waited. "Not yet," she whispered. "Let them load. We can pick a fight in motion." When the crate slid into the van, the driver reached for the door. Alma stood, straightened her coat, and walked like a meter maid with a quota. "Courier," she called pleasantly, "I need to verify chain documentation." He froze, then smiled too wide. "Everything's in order, ma'am." "Great," Alma said, and set her palm on the door. "Open it all the way." He hesitated half a breath, then swung the door high. Blue crates, each with a code. Ours front left. Behind it, a metal case with a digital lock. The driver's smile dropped when he clocked Alma's badge. He went for the handle. Alma tapped the door with her foot. It slammed his fingers, and he yelped. I slid in on the right and put both palms on the JH-72 lid. "County injunction," Alma said. "We're seizing 1 crate. You can keep the rest if your paperwork sings." The driver made the mistake men make when they think women are bluffing. He grabbed my wrist. I bit my tongue and didn't flinch. Alma had his elbow in a heartbeat and pinned his arm against the jamb with a motion that said she'd broken horses young and men later. "Call it, Denton," she said into the radio. "Doc S3, chain of custody transfer in progress. Resistance minimal." 2 warehouse guards jogged over, nightsticks useless against a court order and an audience. Clark arrived behind them, somehow already here. Word travels fast where freight is God. "You want me to call corporate counsel?" she asked Alma. "Or you want me to sign as third-party witness and go back to making my numbers?" "Sign," Alma said. We relabeled the crate, filled the lines, shot the Polaroids, and slid the JH unit into our trunk. The driver pulled his cap low and stared at his shoes. Alma thanked Clark like they'd traded recipes. Castor raised 2 fingers off his wheel as he rolled out. Driver salute. We left the lot with a piece of the machine and a dozen eyes watching. In the evidence room, Belson and Nix were waiting with a bench order and enough gloves to dress a choir. Alma cut the seal. Belson lifted the inner pouch like a bomb tech. Inside, 2 cryovials marked JH1 and JH2, a zip folder, and a vial rack empty except for tape impressions. The zip folder held photocopies, consent forms with forged signatures, dosing logs with dates matching my ledger, a transfer slip from Hawthorne Basement B2, Room 2 to Columbus Hub, Saddleworth S3 Final. Final to where? Someone had left blank. I turned the rack and saw it. A single long hair caught in adhesive, the color of wheat. Not mine. Belson grinned like a kid. "DNA if we're lucky," he said. "Proof the chain holds." "Where's June?" I asked no one. Silence hummed. Denton flicked the document stack like a deck. "We charge Pruitt tomorrow," he said. "We seize Rook's servers. We pull every case with a minor and a consent irregularity. We squeeze the courier. And we get a judge to order Rook to produce all living participants by noon." "And if they don't?" Alma said. "We bring cameras," Denton answered. "And we bring the AG." I drove home at dawn with empty coffee and that little dress in my pocket like a holy relic. The house felt wrong without June's questions layered under the clock. I boiled water I didn't drink and wrote what Ruth taught me to write when the wind went sideways. Timestamps: Columbus, 10:20 p.m. Indy transfer 10:32. Evidence logged 2:11 a.m. Names that sign fast: Castor, Clark, Courier, unreadable. Right-hand scar between thumb and first finger. Codes that recur: JH, Hawthorne B2, archive, bio, final, left blank. Then I set the pen down and walked to the porch. The street woke slow. The paperboy missed my step and sent the news to the hedge. Alma's cruiser rolled up, engine ticking. She didn't get out. She cracked the window and said, "Rook just filed for a temporary restraining order to block our access. Judge's hearing in 40 minutes. You want to sit second chair and look like the woman they forgot to fear?" "I can do that," I said, sliding in. She nodded at my pocket. "Bring the dress," she said. "Sometimes the truth needs fabric." Part 5. The hearing banged open like a grain elevator. Rook's counsel, slick suit, shoe leather you could shave in, argued trade secrets, patient privacy, and irreparable harm. Alma slid me the dress in a clear bag like a baton. Denton kept his chin down and his exhibits high. The injunction, the chain log from Saddleworth, the cryo vials, the consent copies with signatures that looked traced by a tired copier. Judge Nix wore readers on a chain, and the expression of a woman who'd seen every trick since Watergate. "Counselor," she told Rook's man, "you don't get to hide behind HIPAA while you're laundering children through warehouses." He reached for outrage. She reached for the gavel. Motion denied. Temporary restraining order lifted. "Sheriff, proceed." We didn't clap. We moved. Alma and I rode the courthouse elevator with 2 boxes and 3 plans. Denton peeled off to the AG's office. Belson headed to the lab with the wheat hair. I followed Alma to the county lot where a convoy was already idling. 2 cruisers, 1 IT van, 1 box truck with evidence stenciled like a warning label. Target 1 was Pruitt's clinic. Glass, succulents, a smiling logo that lied for a living. We had a walk-in warrant and a tech team in polos. Pruitt met us at reception in a white coat too new. "This is highly irregular," he said. "So is kidnapping," Alma answered, and flashed the judge's fresh order like a badge of the Almighty. The techs ate his servers like corn. Racks unplugged, cables tagged, drives imaged on folding tables. I walked hallways and wrote down what could be carried without hands. Schedule boards, initials on cork, a burned-out light over room 3, where the paint was cleaner around a missing plaque. In a back office, a clipboard hung from a hook with 3 pages left on it. I read the top lines and felt my breath hitch. Not for feeling, for tempo. Haw B2. Intake, Thu 180. Courier. Sparrow confirmed. Generator fuel, Pod 6. HRS. Access via Linden service. Call Clark for door. Different Clark? Same? I took the clipboard and the hook both. Paper beat speeches. Alma's radio popped. "Denton says the AG signed the Hawthorne warrant," dispatch said. "Structural plans inbound." 10 minutes later, a courier hustled blueprints up the sidewalk like pizza. The map showed 2 basements at Hawthorne, not 1. B1 was clinic storage. B2 was grayed out and stamped archive. 1 stairwell, 1 freight lift, 1 generator on Linden. There's your mouth. We took 2 cars and didn't use the lights. Hawthorne Medical looked like a hospital that had sold its soul to a developer. Glass atrium, gift shop, a coffee kiosk staffed by a man who never looked up. Alma signed in at security like a visiting aunt. I wheeled an empty supply cart to look like a vendor. Belson joined with a dolly and a canvas bag that said, "Spare parts," and held bolt cutters. The freight lift required a key. The guard had one on a chain. Alma borrowed it by the ancient method of asking with a court order under it. We rode down with our ears humming. B1 smelled like disinfectant and old paper. The B2 button didn't wake. Alma ran a palm under the panel and found the override slot. Fire code, she said. There's always a way down when you're hauling gurneys. Belson popped the plate. I held the flashlight. Alma bridged the contacts. The car shuddered and sank. B2 opened on cold and quiet. The corridor was narrower. Walls raw concrete. Doors numbered. None labeled. Cameras blinked red dots. Alma's deputy at the panel upstairs looped them to yesterday's feed. We moved like church mice with badges. Room 2's keypad was new. The clipboard code, HAW B2, had a scribble beside it, 7983. I tried it. Red. Alma took a guess every nurse knows. The month and year of the facility inspection posted upstairs, 0518. Green. The door unlatched on a room with stainless counters and a double-door fridge humming like a generator. On a bulletin board, a courier schedule grid with tiny bird stickers, sparrow, wren, finch, by drop times. Alma peeled it and slid it into a sleeve. Belson opened the fridge and whistled low. Empty racks with tape ghosts where vials had sat. On the bottom shelf, a single plastic envelope held a shipping label for Linden Annex, cold storage, tonight 22:30. There's your next mouth. A noise behind us. Air pressure shift, soft tread. We turned as one. A man in scrubs stood in the door with a badge that read, P. Marlowe, Facilities. He had a ring of keys and the posture of someone who didn't get paid enough to pick a side. You're not supposed to be here, he said, but not like a threat, more like a weather report. We have a court order, Alma said. We also have an open question. Where is the annex door on Linden? He looked at the paper like it might bite. There's no annex, he said, and then looked at the floor. Even if there were, it would be the loading bay behind the behavioral wing, past the dumpsters, steel door with no handle, takes a 6-digit code that changes Thursdays. What's today? I asked. Thursday, he said. Then you're our calendar, Alma told him. Walk. He did. Up, across, down a service corridor that smelled like fryer grease and iodine, past linens, past the morgue, past a sign that said, No public access, and meant it. The Linden door looked like a submarine hatch. Alma pressed the intercom. Silence. She knocked. Silence. She looked at Marlowe. He tapped a code that his hand tried to hide. 42319. The lock thunked. Now you've helped, Alma said. Go above ground, find security, and tell them we'll need their signatures when we're done. The annex was smaller than I expected, and bigger than it should have been. Short hallway, one office with a desk too clean, and a cold room that exhaled when the door opened. Blue crates like the van, 3 stacks deep, a metal case with a digital display, 36 to go, a rolling cart with straps, a set of patient gowns folded like hotel towels, a wall clock set 7 minutes fast. I wrote it all down. Alma read barcodes into her phone. Belson photographed everything twice. A rattling outside, diesel clatter, the sigh of air brakes. 22:30 on the nose. A panel truck backed to the lip of the loading slit, brake lights pulsing. The door raised a notch. 2 men in caps slid through like they belonged to the shadows. One said, Sparrow, for the camera that wasn't recording. The other rolled the cart to the stacks and patted the top crate. Ledger? He asked the empty room. Alma stepped out like a hostess. Here, she said, and handed him Nix's order. His smile collapsed. His partner went for the panic button under the cart. Belson was already there, his steel-toed boot pinning the wheel. I moved to the truck and caught the plate in my notebook. Alma didn't raise her voice. "Any keys?" she asked. They had many. Van, padlock, office, a fob with a hawk emblem we hadn't seen before. The fob fit the metal case in the corner. The screen blinked to green and the lid hissed. Inside, not vials. A small sealed pouch with a hospital bracelet taped to it. June Harrow. Temporary name on intake, age 14, blood type O+. Not a person, not yet, but a pathway. A biometrics kit. A chain form stamped with a signature I knew by now, Pruitt's half name, and a destination field, filled in at last. Radnor Field Site, Blakely RD, 3 a.m. I didn't say her name. I wrote the time. Alma looked at me and then at the men. "You two get to pick," she said. "Witnesses with counsel or defendants without." Sparrow broke first. "We just run routes," he whispered. "We don't see faces. They use masks, lights off. Nobody asks." "Now you're asking," Alma said. "And you're going to drive us there." We resealed what we weren't taking, left an inventory on the metal desk, and walked the couriers to their truck like a chaperoned date. Belson took the annex fob. I kept the bracelet pouch under my coat like another heart. Alma slid into the passenger seat of the panel truck and handed me keys to her cruiser. "You tail," she said. "2 cars back. If they bolt, you cut left to Blakely and box them after the fork." "Denton?" I asked. "En route with a state trooper and a warrant that says the night won't save them." We rolled out through the hospital's lungs and into dark. Linden gave to industrial to 2-lane blacktop, 2-lane to gravel. The clock on the courier's dash read 02:41. The stars over Blakely were hard and cheap. A water tower stenciled Radnor stared down like a blind eye. The road broke at a gate with a fold-over chain and a sign that read, "Construction. Authorized personnel only." The men hopped out, hands raised. "Fear honest now." Beyond the gate lay a field split by tire ruts to a stand of poplars. A single barn-shaped shadow squatted where no barn had a right to be. No mail, no fire number, no neighbor lights. Alma keyed the radio. "Denton, we're at the field," she said. "Your warrant just became a prayer. We won't wait." She looked at me. 2 minutes to make a plan," she said. "Then we go get your girl." Part 6. 2 minutes is a long time if you don't waste it. Alma sketched the plan on her palm with a Sharpie. I'd ride with Belson to the flank gate. She'd sit shotgun in the courier truck. Denton would come in cold from the county line with a trooper and the warrant like a key. Jobs, lights, locks, lungs. We rolled. Gravel whispered. The panel truck bumped the chain. Sparrow lifted the loop, and the field opened like a dark gymnasium. Poplars wind-clicked. That barn shape wasn't barn. Steel skin, no windows, low vents, 1 camera on a stanchion. A generator chuffed behind pallets. The truck backed to the loading lip like it had done this dance before. Alma didn't wait for a doorbell. She slapped the dash 3 times, our go signal, then climbed out with the order high and her voice flat. "Sheriff's office, open up." No answer. Belson slid past the pallets and killed the generator with 1 pull. The world went soft. Inside, a UPS kicked, humming thin. I cut the comms box with a multi-tool, Ethernet, coax, power, labeled each cable with painter's tape like it mattered. It will. Denton's headlights sucked the horizon and died. He killed them early like a pro. A bolt slid. The steel door parted a fist width. A man in a disposable cap peered out, blinked at uniforms and paperwork, decided not to be brave, and stepped back. We moved in on a triangle. Alma forward, Me left, Belson right. The air was cold and too clean. LED strips lit a corridor through modular rooms, plastic curtains, stainless carts, a line of blue crates like the hospital annex. On the far wall, a white board. Tonight, Radnor 030. Tomorrow, Kelly Ridge 0130. Bird stickers again. A system hates to improvise. First room, empty cots and an IV pole with tape ghosts where labels had been. Second, a workstation with a drive tower and a purge script slowly counting down from 15 so. I reached under, yanked the power cord, and popped the cage latches with a butter knife from my pocket. Belson bagged the drives in anti-static sleeves, called the hash marks out loud so my notebook could catch SN87F, checksum C24, paper beats tricks. Third room, 3 girls on gurneys, wristbands reading temporary names, June Harrow, Maddie L., KC, hoodies for blankets, pupils a touch wide. A woman in scrubs stood between them, hands up. I do vitals, she said. I don't touch the mixes. Then you'll know where they're made, Alma said. We kept it clean. Belson unstrapped wrists. I took photos of each bracelet in my ledger's margin. Alma read their names slow so the room could hear humanity spoken. One nodded like her neck was heavy. June whispered, "Cold room." The tech pointed, a door with a rubber sweep and a keypad. Zo5 ain't worked again. Patterns make careers and put people away. Inside, vials, prepped syringes, a tray of bracelets with shipping pouches and destination slips. A clipboard ledger, date, hour, weight, courier code, perfect columns, small handwriting, initialed PR. Pruitt loved his pen more than his oath. I slid the whole board into an evidence bag and tucked it under my coat. Alma called Denton in. He crossed the threshold with a trooper and a warrant so new the ink still smiled. "We live here now," he said. "Count everything." A shout from the corridor. Tires on dirt. A second truck. Belson peered through a cut in the curtain. "2 more," he said. 1 SUV. Alma breathed once and became 9 people. Denton, hold the hall. Belson, generator stays dead. LM, girls to the courier truck, low and quiet. Trooper, cones on the road mouth. Lights off until I ask. She palmed me the annex fob. If it gets loud, you slam the truck doors and head to the school lot back in town. Keys are in the visor. I rolled June first. She hated the wheels, jaw clenched, but kept her hands steady around the pouch we'd found with her name on it. "Don't drop that," I said. "It's your story if someone tries to edit it." She nodded like a soldier. The SUV stopped 10 yards out, headlights off. A door opened. A voice that had never had to hurry said, "Sheriff, let's not do theater." Rook. He wore field boots like a costume and carried a smile like a blade. "You don't have jurisdiction," he tried. "I have a judge," Alma said, "and your courier ring just walked us in." "Consultants will end this with a phone call," he said, phone already in hand. Denton lifted his paper. "Call your consultant Nix," he said, "and ask her which side of the bench she's on tonight." Rook's thumb stalled. Someone behind him clicked safety off. The trooper lit up the cones. 1 flash, then killed them. Edges showed. 2 men near the SUV bumper, 1 by the crates, 1 hugging the poplars. Alma didn't raise the volume. "On the ground," she said. "Palms visible. We'll count to 1. Belson threw something metal. It clanged deep. Heads turned like fish. Alma stepped and took the SUV man's wrist in a move I'd only seen on deputized Saturdays. The trooper scooped the second. Denton shouldered the third into pallets. I said, down to the fourth, like I meant now, and he obeyed gravity. Zip ties sang. Rook finally found outrage. You don't even know what this facility does. Tonight it stops, Alma said. Tomorrow you'll explain it with counsel. We walked him in and read the wall to him like a Sunday lesson. Whiteboard roots, the ledger, the fobbed case, the cryo-rack stubs, the purge script I'd unplugged. None of this says child, he argued. Denton tapped the bracelet pouch against his chest. This does, he said. And so will your email when my people finish undressing your servers. The Scrubs woman found her words. There's more, she said, and pointed to the floor under the workstation. False kick plate. Behind it, 3 drives, a notebook, and a Polaroid of a table full of bracelets dated a month back. The notebook was neat as a bank. Batch numbers, courier codes to towns whose names tasted like dust. That's conspiracy ink. Sirens finally painted the poplars. County cars, state car, EMT. No dramatics, just boots, boxes, and forms. We loaded the girls slow. June watched the ceiling, not the men. I handed her my cardigan. She slid her arms in and hid her wristband like it was a diamond. On the tailgate, the EMT lifted her eyelid, checked reflexes, murmured, "Benzo family," and started a saline line. You with her? She asked. I'm the one with the notebook, I said. That counts. Back inside, Denton took Rook by the elbow like a chaperone. You're under arrest, he said, and let the trooper finish it clean. Pruitt wasn't here to enjoy the bracelets. A deputy texted, picked up at the clinic with a suitcase and a plane ticket that left before dawn. His coat was still bright white. We sealed the steel door with evidence tape that made my hands shake for the first time all night. Not fear, just relief given a place to sit. Alma flagged the camera, tagged the room, signed the seals, handed me the pen. You found half this place, she said. You may as well write your name on it. Dawn bled up behind the water tower while we convoyed back. At the school lot, I took a minute and did what Ruth taught me decades ago. Flattened the stubs of a night into a ledger that a clerk could read without guessing. Times, plates, names, serials, who touched what, where it went. I put the bracelet pouch at the top and taped the Sharpie notes from Alma's palm to the back like a relic. In the ambulance, June's hand found my sleeve. Grip like small rope. Is it over? She asked, voice thin but steady. No, I said. It's begun. For once, that sounded like good news. Part 7. By 9 a.m., the courthouse smelled like coffee and mop water. Alma stacked our boxes on the clerk's ledge. Drives, ledgers, bracelet pouches, photos, like bricks in a dam. Denton's signature thinned to a wire on the chain forms. The 3 girls slept down the street in peds. A nurse taped "stable" beside each name and drew a crooked sun because some people armor themselves with doodles. Arraignment first. Rook came in without his field boots, ankles pink above county slippers. He tried charm. The judge preferred statutes. Counts 1 through 8, she read, met his eyes, and set bond at a number that lives in the clouds. Pruitt video called from holding in Scrubs the color of a bad idea. His lawyer started to talk jurisdiction. Alma held up the shipping ledger. The judge raised one eyebrow, which is how you lose an argument in this county. Belson walked the grand jury through rooms they'd never seen. The cold box, the purge script, the bracelets sorted like mail. He spoke clean, no embroidery. I sat 3 rows back and filled an index card per witness. time, point, exhibit, so later I could stack the day like stovewood. The Scrubs tech flipped before lunch. Immunity's a magic word when you've watched wrists get tagged. She mapped couriers, schedules, who signed what, and pointed to PR on every line like a weather vane. The machine woke. Subpoenas went out on state letterhead. A server farm in Denver coughed up emails with tidy subject lines. A vet supplier in Cheyenne sent invoices dated to the minute. Rook's calendar matched our whiteboard down to the bird stickers. Paper doesn't keep secrets. It just waits. June woke near noon and asked for her hoodie. I brought it with the bracelet pouch zipped inside, then stood in the doorway while a social worker with a blunt haircut said all the legal words soft enough to hear. June pressed a thumb on each page where a grown-up pointed, and the room gained one more trajectory that wasn't a route code. Afternoon turned to town. Elk Ridge does disaster by casserole. The church lot filled with pickup hoods, coffee thermoses, and faces that swing between shame and fury when the story's about their own zip code. Alma took a folding table as a podium. "We moved on a warrant," she said. "We have victims. We have records. We'll try this in court, not on porches." A man in a seed cap shouted about outsiders. I stepped up, ledger in hand. "Outsiders didn't put War-5 Wayne on a door in our county," I said. He found something else to stare at. That night, I sorted. Drives to the state lab, copy sets to Denton, photographs and sleeves with grease pencil captions anyone could read without knowing the town. I locked the pouch with the extra bands in my bread box because Ruth taught me, hide what matters in something old and honest. Then I slept in my chair with the percolator set and my cardigan missing because June had it, which felt right. Day 2 was heavier. Reporters learned our name. The AG's office sent a polite team with shoes that avoided mud. They asked for narrative, and I handed them receipts, times, codes, plate numbers, purchase orders from Wyomix Logistics, which, bless them, had filed for a tax credit last year under their real EIN. Denton grinned like a dog who'd treat a raccoon. "Greed is the laziest editor," he said. Pruitt tried to thread a needle on local radio. Preventative medicine, pilot protocols, informed consent. The station cut to weather halfway through. Even the clouds were offended. 20 minutes later, the AG dropped 3 more counts and a press note that used the word racketeering without clearing its throat. Rook blinked at reality by midweek. His attorney whispered, "Cooperation." The DA offered a shelf of years with daylight at the back if he drew the line straight to the money. He hesitated until Denton slid a photo across the plastic. Bracelets piled like coins. Rook's thumb shook. He talked. Accounts. Transfers. A quiet donor fund with patriotic branding and invoices that washed courier fees until they smelled like scholarships. Alma didn't smile. "We'll turn over the stones you named," she said, "and if we find more snakes, we'll count them too." The girls got better. June learned the cafeteria schedule and stopped scanning doorways every 10 breaths. "Cold turkeys for stories," the pediatrician said. "We titrate." A school counselor brought algebra worksheets and a pencil with a chewed eraser. I swapped it for one sharp enough to make clean numbers. "You'll want tidy columns," I told her. She smirked. "Like you?" "Exactly like me." Sundown. I drove to the Cottonwoods and parked where Ruth used to tie her dog. The river moved the way it always has, forward, unbothered. I folded an index card into thirds and wrote 5 lines for the next girl who would knock at an east-facing door. Keep the bottle caps, the labels, the date stamps. Say the thing once and write it twice. Learn the clerk's first name and the judge's middle initial. Put your story in numbers someone can't argue with. Leave when you should. Return with a warrant. Week 3. The state unsealed the indictments. Names from meetings, names from emails, names that wear cufflinks to breakfast. The church ladies read the list and sighed like after hail. A podcaster called and asked for color. I said, "We use ledger paper here." She hung up kindly. Sentencing won't be a movie. It'll be fluorescent lights, a gavel that's seen too much, and a line of dates recited without adjectives. That's fine. I don't need fireworks. I need the annex keys returned and the whiteboard erased with cleaner that smells like lemons. On a Tuesday, the mail brought a padded envelope from Cheyenne. Inside, a copy of the vet supply receipt with a note in block letters. "Thank you for asking. Nobody ever asked." I slid it behind the lab report in a manila folder labeled State and didn't read it twice. June came by my duplex the first evening she was allowed out with a chaperone. She stood on my porch with my cardigan washed and folded, eyes steadier than the first night. "You keep this," I said. "Looks better on you." She shook her head and pressed it back. "I've got a new jacket," she said, "with my own name stitched inside." We sat and watched Main Street yawn toward dark. The percolator ticked on the counter. I handed her an index card and a pen. "Write the dates," I said. "We'll move the rest the slow way." She wrote. I listened. The porch faced east, as ever. And if the river behind Elk Ridge still rolled brown after rain, it also carried a little less of what we'd all pretended not to see. That's not triumph. It's maintenance. It's a clean ledger, a door that swings honest, a town that knows the judge's phone number and isn't afraid to dial it. No violins, just the account, complete. Part 8. Sentencing days start like blizzards, quiet, then whiteout. By 8, the hallway outside Division B was a braid of reporters, church hats, and men who used to shake Rook's hand at fundraisers. Alma stood with her jacket folded on her arm like a flag. Denton carried a banker's box and a face that said he'd slept 3 hours. We didn't chase spectacle. We filed. The clerk stamped. The court clock coughed once and started earning its keep. Pruitt went first. No white coat, just jail khaki and a haircut done with impatience. The DA read counts like a metronome. The judge kept pace. When it was his turn to talk, Pruitt tried science words. The judge answered with ordinary ones. You knew. You profited. You're sentenced. Years stacked. Concurrent where the law required. Consecutive where it could. No applause. Paper rustled. That's justice here. Rook came in next with a new lawyer and old arrogance chipped to powder. His plea had teeth. Cooperation. Forfeiture. Names that bought him daylight later. He got a slab of time anyway, and a restitution order that will shadow him longer than his sentence. When the deputy took his elbow, he glanced at me like I'd written his ending. I hadn't. He had. I just delivered the ledger. We didn't forget the staffers. Probation for the ones who patched blankets and whispered directions. Jail for the ones who signed purchase orders with eyes wide open. The Scrubs tech testified again and walked out with a program slot and a measuring stick for the rest of her life. Choices count, both ways. After lunch, the AG's rep took a turn. She filed a civil suit that would peel cash from shell companies and route it to a fund with a name I could live with. The Cottonwood account. Not awareness, not healing. Money for therapy, school, locks, bus fare, line items that fix things instead of feelings. Alma slid me a pen. "Sit on the advisory board?" she asked. I said yes before the ink hit. June asked if she could speak. The room braced. She didn't perform. She set her bracelet pouch on the rail, said her name, her school, her plan to take algebra next fall, and sat. 10 seconds. Perfect. The judge wrote something long in the margins of the order. I hope it was a blessing, but it looked like a reminder. Victims aren't props. By 5, orders were signed, bond was gone, and the hallway sounded like a church basement after a storm. Quiet, tired, purposeful. Alma leaned on the water fountain and grinned without teeth. "We held," she said. Belson tossed me a peppermint and missed on purpose. Denton packed the last exhibit, thumped the lid, and said, "File it where mice can't chew." I went home the way I always do. 3 turns, 1 stop at the railroad light, whether it's red or not. My duplex smelled like coffee and old wood. I took the jars off the pantry shelf and washed them, one by one, as if grief and chlorine share a recipe. Then I wrote cards for people who'd carried weight. The traveling nurse who labeled our first vial straight, the clerk who stamped after hours, the trooper who lit cones once and then sat in the dark till dawn. 3 sentences each, no adjectives. Gratitude shaped like a receipt. Elk Ridge moved like a herd that's been spooked and then steadied. The annex was unsealed, cleaned with a mop bucket that squeaked, and refit as a clinic with windows. The school board adopted a policy I wrote on a napkin. 2-person rule. Signed log. Parental consent is not a substitute for a second adult. The pastor preached about light without naming me. Good. I don't need pulpits. I need forms. June came by on Saturdays to drink cocoa and bully decimals. She and her foster aunt learned the courthouse like a map. They keep a copy of the emergency numbers card I carry, laminated and smudged. My cardigan stayed with June through the cold snap. Belted looked better on her anyway. Ruth would have liked the closing scene. We planted a cottonwood by the water tower with the girls and Alma and half the town. We didn't read poems. We read the names on the shipping ledger out loud from the back. Towns, not children, because the scheme fed on our distance. Then we sank a brass tag at the base that said simply, "We counted." Late that night, under a sky with room for everyone, I sorted my last pile. Evidence returned to archives, duplicates to the AG, 1 small envelope to the Cottonwood account with a note in block caps, for pencils and bus passes. I kept 3 things: my mother's photograph, the first chain of custody sticker we signed, and the index card from Part 1 that says, "Keep your doors honest." I slid them into the bread box. Hiding in plain sight still works. You want a ribbon? I can't hand you one. What I can hand you is a kit. 1 ledger with hard covers. Write the date before the story. 5 index cards. Print block letters a clerk can read hungover. 2 clean jars with lids. Evidence likes company. A list of phones, sheriff direct, ER charge nurse, night judge, county attorney who actually answers. A coat that isn't pretty but has deep pockets. Courage rides better when your hands have somewhere to go. If a knock comes at 3 a.m., don't argue. Light on. Door open. Feet moving. Neighbors called. If an official shrugs, Escalate with nouns. Warrant, chain of custody, conflict on the record. If a story asks for violins, give it timestamps. Numbers don't wobble. As for me, I'll keep the percolator set for 5:30 and the porch chair turned east. Kids from the high school will still find their way to my step with questions that sound like homework and aren't. I'll pass them a pen and a card and teach the trick that saved us. Tell it clean. Write it twice. Hand it to someone sworn to read. The river behind Elk Ridge still rolls brown after rain. The lights in the annex now burn warm, not secret. The poplars click like they did the night we walked in. Only now it sounds like applause from trees that know we're finally keeping count. That's the close. No fade out, no sermon. Just a town that stiffened its spine. A ledger with its columns full, and an old woman who will answer if you knock before sunup and say, "I've got coffee, a map, and a Sharpie. Let's move the mountain the slow way."